Hello, everyone, and welcome to me being slightly late for my own stream. Today we will be working on Girl by Moonlight, assuming that I can properly open things. Oh my god, it's a disaster. It's an unqualified disaster. Boop. And boop. Why is it not letting me open anything? What's going on? Alright. Here we go. Today we are working on the Fusion and the Time Traveler. That's the plan. I'm going to start with the Time Traveler to get warmed up. The Fusion is going to be a tricky, complicated one. We'll get to it later. I'm sorry, I'm late mostly due to traffic, which everyone hates, so surely y'all understand my dilemma. So, with the Time Traveler, we are going to be doing our core moves, or well, our core abilities. I need to stop calling these moves. It's an old habit from other games. We're going to be deciding what their main stats are. We're going to be doing gather info questions. And then lastly, we'll be doing the darkness prompt, XP triggers, that kind of stuff. So, the Time Traveler is our playbook that is going to be a stand-in for characters like Sabrina's daughter in Sailor Moon, who comes back, or in Madoka there is, of course, Homura-chan. So, characters like that. And I'm going to just start by checking my notes and figuring out which stats make the most sense for the Time Traveler. Right, so in my notes, which I was taking while I was away, I feel like there was something relating to this. Nope, okay, nothing relevant. Good. I can just move on. So, with the Time Traveler, I am thinking of this as a fairly cold playbook. And so, when we're setting their stats, I think it's going to look like, just make sure everything's correct here. Stats for them, definitely conceal, I feel like is very important. But then maybe that they're going to straddle the line between Kudere and like Moe or something. Conceal, confess. Could be a fun pairing. So like they have this issue of like having hidden information but needing to expound it to the other characters. Defy would also be a good one. It's also a reasonable candidate. Conceal just feels like so important because you just, you know, you're from the future. You have secret information, or you're from the past or whatever. But like, I feel like it's a sneaky one. This all being said, I am interested in reminding myself of what my other playbooks have for high stats. So, all right, we've got Conceal Embody for the Enigma. The Guardian does not have a high stat in ARG. Actually, this is a fair point too. So for the Guardian, the stats have changed since we wrote this one up, and so this actually needs to change. So what the Guardian can do is going to be different now. If we go Defy, Investigate, they're kind of just like straight up doing all the stuff, which might be good. I'm going to look through the others and see. So Outsider, who's our rival character, has Perceive and Express. Stranger has Conceal, Investigate. So the thing about giving another playbook Conceal as a starting stat means that a lot of people have it, which I'm not super into. So maybe what the Time Traveler actually has instead of Conceal is Empathize. And that, to me, rings more true, ultimately. Because you should be able to understand other people. And I guess the other thing I should look at is there a stat that no one has at start? Because we're kind of also looking at maybe filling those out. Unlikely Hero, Confess, Forgive. Stranger, Conceal, Investigate. Perceive, Express. So these are all unique so far amongst these playbooks. Defy and Investigate. So there's overlap on Investigate. No one starts with Empathize yet. All of our Unlikely Hero starts with Forgive. Yeah, so all the core stats are covered. Investigate is covered twice. And Empathize, no one has yet in this spread. So Time Traveler could have Empathize. Definitely the Fusion is going to have Empathize as well. It would make a great deal of sense for that to be the case. Like, this just feels super obvious. It might be Empathize, Forgive. It might be Empathize, Embody. This is kind of the trio that make the most sense to me for this playbook, which we will come back to later. Ratsuka, I am in the midst of designing a role-playing game that is a hack of Blades in the Dark, but for doing magical girl anime style fiction. And so right now I'm working on the playbooks, which are like the character sheets, basically. Each character kind of archetype gets their own playbook. Okay, you're familiar with Blades. Great. So this will in many ways be familiar. We have less total actions than Blades, and less per category, so there's a little bit of like a difference in the numbers game aspect of things. But a lot of the elements should be familiar, like you can push yourself, there's still stress. We have some slightly different interactions built around it, but a lot of the core stuff is untouched. Okay, great. Yeah, we've bridged the understanding gap. Feels good. Okay, so for the Time Traveler, I think maybe Empathize, Confess is good. I like this Confess thing because, like, within our trinity of like skills around your feelings and how you express them, there's Conceal, Express, Confess, right? These are kind of a trinity. Conceal obviously is the like inversion. It's the one about hiding all your feelings. Express allows you to like make use of your feelings or thoughts or whatever, and Confess is just like you awkwardly, clumsily, poorly blurt them out, right? So I feel like for this playbook, that one is the most interesting because it's like you can't always eloquently be like, but I just know what you're like in the future. There's a lot of, it's going to be awkward. There's a certain awkwardness, I think, to the whole topic of like revealing this information. And also, sorry, my seasonal allergies are flaring up again, so I'm going to be muting periodically to sneeze. Um, and so the other reason I'm putting Confess in here as one of their starting stats is that this fits perfectly with Homura-chan's whole arc from Madoka. And, like, of all the people to have for this playbook, she is the most iconic, like, possible instance of this character type. So I'm going to be keeping her, like, foremost in my thoughts in the design of it. Cool, so we've got our high stats. This lets us do our XP prompts then very easily because we know that our character is expected to confess things and to empathize with people. And yes, Sith Master, exactly. Confess is great as like a fish out of water kind of move, which, you know, we're a fish out of time in this case, but the same idea applies, right? That we are not equipped with like good social graces to navigate the world with. And I mean, most characters in this type of fiction aren't, to be perfectly honest. So because XP triggers always connect with what our core stats for the character, our core actions for the characters are, so we know that we need to do things with empathize and confess. So if we look back at other playbooks that have those, so nothing else has empathize yet, so we're kind of forging some new territory as far as that goes. But the Unlikely Hero, if I table this playbook for a moment, the Unlikely Hero has Confess Forgive as their high stats, and so their actions are compassion, address the challenge with compassion or honesty, right? So honesty is our thing that relates to confess here. I think they're the only playbook previously. Oh no, these guys have forgive as well. But right, this is fusion. We're not there yet. Everyone else steers clear of that. The only playbook with an action in Moe to start is the Outsider, who has Perceive. So we are forging ahead into unproven territory. So for previous playbooks with Confess, honesty was the thing. I don't necessarily want to give this exact same trigger, but something in the spirit, I think, is generally what we want to go for. And in terms of how we're using empathize, this also gets weird because with the time traveler thing, a lot of it is about, if we look at the like Homura-chan storyline, it's about having the stuff that's going on in the background because you have this information that other people don't, right? That you exist in a position of superior understanding of circumstances. And so while the actions that we've chosen, I think, reflect the character really well, they don't necessarily reflect that tension between what you know and what other people don't. But that might not be able to come through in this aspect of the character. And I'm trying to think if there is a pairing that makes that stuff make sense. So, I mean, we can use the Confess to be the one where we talk about, like, information you shouldn't have. Right? Like, unknowable things that we have access to because we exist, you know, outside of the regular flow of time. And so maybe that's where our Confess comes in, is that's how we deliver this like awkward information. right? Because we want to encourage this playbook to be one where the player is playing up their whole like different time origin thing. So they're either acting all superior the way that Chibi-Usa does, or by quietly and humbly using that information the way that Homura does. So maybe we move some of these things around too. We could pull out of Kudere entirely and put something in Tsundere, so we could have like Confess Express, which feels like a very overlapping skill set. It could be like Confess Embody, or this could be another playbook with Defy. Because yeah, like our like big picture thing for this playbook is that we're like back in time or forward in time for some important reason. And the reason designing that is tricky is that, of course, we're playing to find out what happens. So we don't know what the future is in the way that in a show that's written, in a show that has a singular author, right, and is not collaborative fiction and is not being improvised, right, we have no way of, we can't build this fiction from the end backwards in a way that then allows for us to have this whole like reveal moment. What we instead have to do is make a lot of productively ambiguous and evocative stuff that is not fully defined, and like act as if there is a mystery, and then later find out what that mystery was about and what the answer is, right? Like, the reveal moment can still happen. It's just that the way that we play into it is very, very, very different. So I might come back to this whole set of things. It might be best to do some abilities first, because much like the outsider who has a move about having a rival, right? Choose another player character. They are your rival. You always have exactly one rival. Put their name here. Boom. And then some interactions around that, right? So like in terms of the kinds of mechanics we're using, I think this one's going to have a lot of similar stuff, because with the time traveler, we're going to pick a person that we have traveled through time to have some kind of connection to. Because like you could travel through time for the purposes of like retrieving a thing or protecting a place. But given the kind of fiction we're making, which is about like friendships and relationships and all this kind of shit, like, of course this character needs to come back for a person. It's not enough to have it be a MacGuffin. It needs to actually be about someone. And so we have like a target of our time travel-iness. And then similarly to how with the rival, we have stuff like you have special armor against any consequences of your rival's actions. You can spend special armor to act before your rival does. We're going to have abilities that we can unlock for our character that trigger off of that stuff and that relate to who our rival is and what our rival is about. Yeah, cool. So, there's one move I definitely want to give them, which is the faster recovery move from Blades. Because I think that's just a really cool, like, it's an important mechanical bit to have a character who like heals harm faster, and I think it's interesting to have it be the time traveler because there's this whole like weird atemporal thing around injury that you can play around with, and that could be fun. So permanently fill one segment of your recovery clock. And actually, I wanna look up this move in Blades and just double check exactly how it works. So it is a cutter move. Right, vigorous. Yeah, so here you go, vigorous. It says you recover harm faster. Permanently fill one of your healing clock segments. Take +1 die to healing treatment rolls. Easy peasy. Yeah, so oops. So the tough as nails option from the Hound, I think we've already given to the Guardian. Either the Guardian or the Outsider has it. I can't remember which, but I'm pretty sure we've already had that one. And I like taking those moves and splitting them. Like I like that the Hound has one way of dealing with harm, and that the Cutter has a different way of dealing with harm. And not just being like, this is the fighty playbook. It gets all of the moves around harm and like being durable. Which, like, obviously you can just take a veteran advance and get that move, but that's not really the point, right? Like, we could have a generic plague book called Scoundrel, and there could just be this massive list of abilities, and you just pick any of them, which is functionally what Blades is, right? Because you can take any number of veteran advances, you can just pick any freaking move you want, but we compartmentalize them into these logistical units as part of our design, right? So the divisions are, yes, arbitrary, but everything's arbitrary. So like that's the whole point, is that someone has made a decision, the designer has made a decision about where they want to put those things. Yeah, Sithmaster, we could try giving them the free assist move as well. I would not be averse to that. It would also make sense to give it to the Enigma, though, with their whole showing up to help thing. Which I think I designed a move that was about that without including those mechanical bits, but I think that's actually, now that I hear you suggest that, yeah, I mean, I know it's called Foresight, homie, but I think it actually fits better into the kinds of mechanical space that the Enigma is about. But yeah, maybe giving them a move like Reflexes as well. I like the idea of including something for Reflexes that is conditional, the way that, like, so the Outsider effectively has Reflexes that they can access sometimes, right? So you can spend your special armor to act before your rival does, which is essentially like you can have Reflexes against your rival by having your special armor move. Because of the kind of content in the game, I don't think it's appropriate to just be like, you know, someone has just the full-on Reflexes move from Blades. Because generally we're a bit lower power or more conditionally powerful in this game. We might throw that in as a transcendent move for them, which I will write a note to, so consider giving them Reflexes. So when you're transformed, you can have that, but when you're not transformed, certainly not. So how do we do the little flavor blurb for this, right? So this is like injury. It's almost like injury has a different meaning for you. But really this is like you are out of the regular flow of time. And injuries fade from you quickly. right? It's like you don't even heal. They just like, you just shed that timeline in which you were injured and recover that way. So you permanently fill one segment of your recovery clock. In the vigorous move from the cutter, you get +1 die to healing treatment rolls. I don't think we necessarily want to give that to this playbook. But I'll leave a note. Maybe +1 die to recovery. The reason I'm hesitant to include that in the move in this case is because in my game recovery, someone else does it to you, so it doesn't necessarily make sense for you to give them an extra die. I don't know. Yeah, so Ratsuka, who we would consider outsiders would be like, from Steven Universe, Peridot would fit the bill. God, I can't remember her name, but the in Madoka, the one with the spear and all the like religious imagery, whatever her name is a pretty clear candidate for outsider. And her chosen rival bounces between Sayaka-chan and Homura-chan, back and forth a bunch of times. And then, like, to continue with Madoka, right? Like, the unlikely hero is Madoka, obviously. We have the outsider, who is what's her butt, with the one who always has the like little fang thing, and is always eating. Mami and or Sayaka are both guardians, and then Homura is a time traveler. That would be like that pairing. In Sailor Moon, I think sometimes there's an argument for Sailor Mars being either the outsider or a guardian, depending on how you want to run it. It's either a guardian who has taken the like rival moves, or she's just straight up an outsider. But it's also about like which aspects of the playbook these people want to tap into. Yeah, so in as much as we have like media touchstones, some of these are more or less on the nose with them. And yes, AJ Robe, they definitely become Biff from Back to the Future as their darkness for this playbook, for the Time Traveler playbook. I should think that would be entirely obvious. And yeah, it's tricky because I haven't watched like literally all of the anime that I might want to in order to like properly flesh out this game, but I have like a pretty broad frame of reference. And these don't all map like 1-to-1 to characters that we would know and love, right? So it's a little tricky. Other moves that we might want to give this playbook, we could talk about like special armor for this playbook. Originally, I had planned to have special armor be something about injury, but I like this covering that aspect, the idea of like things being kind of like out of phase in terms of time with you, so you'll get hurt, but then you're just like, oh, I'm me from a time where that didn't happen, so it's fine, I'm not actually hurt. I think this recovery move is a more interesting place to put it, so it's not that you avoid the harm, it's just that later the harm goes away more easily. I think that is cool. So now we can talk about special armor and what that might be for this character. And a special armor move requires both a thing that it protects you from and then a thing that you can spend it to get, like a more active thing. So in this case, I feel like being able to like have it protect you from like surprises could be a thing. So you can spend your special armor to resist a consequence. Oops. Relating to surprise or like I feel like this is a thing where it's just like bad luck doesn't happen to you, you know, like someone drops the important MacGuffin and you just like are there to catch it because of course you're there to catch because you knew they would drop it because you're the time traveler. Due to surprise or misfortune. Misfortune is incredibly broad, but I think it's fine because it's misfortune is a like bad thing that happened passively. It doesn't protect you from like shit that the villains are doing to actively mess you up. And then I like the idea of spending it also I gotta double check my wording on special armor. So yes, you have special armor against blah, and then you can spend it to blah. Okay, so so you have special armor against any consequence relating to surprise or misfortune. You may spend your special armor to thing. So special armor, just like in Blades, is like a once per score thing that you can spend. Just to provide some context here. So we'll go back to the cutter, right? So, and you can only ever have one, is the other thing. So the cutter's move around that is Battle-Worn. You may expend your special armor to reduce harm from an attack in combat or to push yourself during a fight. Pretty straightforward. Focused. You may spend your special armor to resist a consequence of surprise or mental harm, fear, confusion, losing track of someone, or to push yourself from ranged combat or tracking. So in Blades, they're really straightforward. It's either spend it to get an extra die, or spend it to as like a defensive, or like ablate it in order to deal with a consequence. And I think there are some that are less direct. Let's see. This one is fortitude to resist consequence of fatigue, weakness, or chemical effects, or to push yourself when working with a technical skill. Some inconsistencies in formatting, but overall it's basically the same. And then, yeah, they have the stealth one, push yourself for a feat of athletics or stealth. Right, so here we go. No, still, all of these are push yourself. They're all about gaining dice. I've been doing them more about spending it to gain some kind of fictional benefit. It's rare that I'm giving special armor a thing that lets people get an extra die. I'm wondering if there are any examples of this in this. No, they're all super standard. Spend it to resist or use it to push yourself. So it's either extra die or make up for a failed roll in some way. But that's basically special armor. You only ever get one. And it can be very abstract, as Sith Master is pointing out. It can be like the Shadow has special armor against being detected. And it's not necessarily like literal armor, right? It's just another resource that the player has to play around with. So in this case, I like the idea of being able to spend it to like play with time. That way it's on a really finite resource, so we don't have this character like constantly doing a bunch of like time travel bullshit. Because it's Blades, it doesn't, because we're a Blades hack, it doesn't make sense to have this be that this playbook gets flashbacks and all the others don't, because that's like core to how the game works. So that is bad. It's a bad instinct to want to just be like, they can do flashbacks because like everyone's going to be able to do flashbacks all the time. That's just like fundamental to how you play this game and to how the whole idea of like engagement roles and all that kind of shit work. The entire framing of the game requires that flashbacks be a thing in order for it to function. So when we're talking about playing with time here, we have to think about like what that can mean in a game that's already fairly fluid about time structurally. The world of the fiction is not fluid about time, right? Just like in Blades, time progresses normally. It's just that we as an audience, or as people exploring the narrative that we're creating, we jump around in time a bunch in order to make the narrative work. Create a scene as a flashback that they already saw and redo it, or like a flash forward. Yeah, like I'm trying to manage, because like making us all replay a scene has several problems. Like one, it can be tedious at the table. Not always, but it can be. It's really difficult to define a scene anyways, especially in Blades. The kind of structural limit that we would have is like either the whole score or a roll, because like a series of rolls, we don't know how many series of rolls are actually, like all the rolls in the course of the score are all connected. They all form a thread, right? So it's impossible to say how far back you can go. And then if we backpedal, then it's like, do we erase the stress that people spent on the things? It gets weird, right? I don't want to have it be like a rewind the state of play. So for those many reasons, I am leery of doing any like replay a scene thing, because we have no way of defining what the fuck a scene even is to begin with, amongst a host of other reasons why that will be difficult to pull off. But then, and I had some other thought that I was going to do that wasn't just slagging things. It's also outside of the spirit of play, right? Because we're already doing this whole thing of, you know, we move forward a bit, then we might flash back to something. There's already enough going on around that, and there's this idea of like playing the game fast and loose, because you have flashbacks to fall back on, and because the characters can resist consequences, and you're meant to be daring, and to like play aggressively forward, and then after making a jump however far, if you need to back up to fill in that space between where you jump from and where you end up, then great, you can do it. But I feel like being able to rewind, and depending on the conditions of it, it's going to end up being contrary to that existing structure of the game, right? Like, as there's there are already so many ways for the players to tell the GM like, no, fuck you, I do it anyways, here's how or why. And at most the GM can say to that like, it's going to cost you this much, you know, for the most part. That's the kinds of power or authority that the GM has, right? So in as much as like, so here's where game design gets really interesting, is that we want to create the feeling of a character who is playing around and rewinding time or whatever else, or who has this like non-linear perception of time, right? We want to create that feeling first and foremost in order to make this playbook give us the experience that we want, right? Our goal isn't to actually make it do those things, right? To actually play around with time. That doesn't necessarily need to happen in order to make us feel like we're doing that, and like flavor our narrative according to this whole like time travel idea. Right? In as much as this move here says a lot about how like the character being out of time. This colors our fiction a lot, but like functionally as a move, the mechanics of it have nothing to do with time, basically, or any kind of like weird rewindy anything. It just says we permanently fill one segment of our recovery clock. I guess it like takes less time for us to recover, theoretically, if you want to make that about time. But anyways, my point being, this bit first, which is just flavor text, saying why we get this mechanical thing, this gives us that feeling of like, oh yeah, because my character is out of phase with time, blah blah blah, right? Like this tells us more about the or gives us that feeling that we want, right? By just by coloring it. Now I'm not saying that all mechanics should be color. This mechanical benefit still supports this idea effectively, but that in terms of what the mechanics actually are versus how they make us feel about the character, there's a very big gap there, in terms of like how this works versus how it makes us feel. Those are very different things. They're connected, obviously, but bleh. So, in terms of what kind of thing we can spend our special armor to do actively, what kind of fictional benefit we might get, here's where it gets weird, because like my brain is prompting me with a bunch of bad ideas already that completely contradict my rambling of just now. My brain wants to put in things that are like really overtly time fucky, but I don't think that's actually the right way to go. But surely there is some clever thing. So I'm going to look back in my mind at like the stuff that we saw characters do in the fiction that we're sourcing from, and try to think of like what made those characters feel time travel-y and interesting. What are some aspects of that? And the first thing that comes to mind, right, is the whole idea of like, which I have skipped, which is really bad of me, but like we need to remember this whole thing. So like you traveled through time for like to change someone's fate, we'll say. Name them and the reason. Travel. Blah 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 blah. And this will include some of our promise mechanics as well. They'll have some promises relating to this, but it's nice to just name the person. And I am happy to leave room for this changing, but presumably we're here to address some individual's thing. And I'm happy to have this be that we traveled forward in time, that we traveled backwards in time, that we traveled from a parallel dimension, different timeline, you know? Like, it doesn't strictly have to be you're from the future, you came back in time. And so the directionality of this understanding gap doesn't have to be, I'm from the future and I know everything about what happens to you. It could also be, I'm from the past. I know everything about what came before you. Right? I know this whole network of decisions and families and just, you know, etc. that all led to you being where you are. that is similarly interesting. And we are bonded through time in an interesting way. And that is like, I'm your great, 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 whatever, ancestor person. So let's fix typos. So that aspect I don't care about, right? The direction of the travel. And it's kind of, it can be fun to have the like Homura-chan thing flipped, where it's like, actually the person that you've come here to save knows everything about what happened in your life, because what happened in your life was in the past, but you're some ancient hero who's here now to teach the like new hero what's up. And yeah, we want to reinforce that connection in a way that isn't just playing the rival or guardian still. So, right, we're connected to a player, but we need to have this correct connection function differently, right? If we want to save people from danger, we can play the guardian. We can spend our special armor. Spend it to give +1 die to someone else's action. You do not need to be physically present to do this. Great. And like to resist, or we can spend it, we can ablate it to have suffered less in defense of, or suffering consequences instead of allies. Right? That's a very protective one. Outsider, again. Special armor against any consequence of your rival's actions. So you're able to like bail them out of problems, essentially. Or if you two fight, obviously that would work in that sense as well. But more often than not, you're going to be bailing your idiot rival out of their problems and fixing their stuff. And you can spend it to act before they do. So a more antagonistic, or like trying to prove you're better than the other person thing. We also have the Enigma, who can spend their special armor to mysteriously appear in a situation in a perfect moment to help a friend. Give them foresight, the move. A note to myself. Right, so we have all these different interactions around that. We have an incomplete special armor move for the stranger. So yeah, like where does the time traveler fit into all of that? I don't like the idea of it just straight up, you're here to protect a person. I think it's more interesting to have them be here about like sharing knowledge or information. Right? They're here to like share their context and their understanding with this other person. And again, because time travel is about like in these narratives, time travel is about like knowing more than the other person ultimately, or knowing things that they don't and couldn't possibly know. In terms of like what we spend our armor to get, I don't know. It's a big fat question mark. These fictional bits are tricky. They're complicated. I can't think of a good one right now, so we're gonna come back to it later. So let's move on to our gather info questions for now, and we'll circle back. So, a bunch of weird time-related ones. And I think a bunch about like actually understanding people. I think it is interesting to have that be a thing. And yeah, I've saved the most difficult playbooks for last. There's this one and the fusion. And the fusion is going to be hella complicated. Yeah, I like when will X happen? Which is like a fun example of a leading question. I can be like, when is this going to happen? This thing. And then I'm saying this thing's going to happen, but when? I mean, this gives me a thought of like, make some statement about the future the immediate future. Something akin to the move from Apocalypse World, where the Battle Babe can like know who's going to die and stuff, right? Where you can make this like generalized statement, but we still play to find out how that happens. You state a result, but not how it gets there. And yeah, so the fusion would be like Garnet from Steven Universe, a character who is a relationship. And I think that's probably the only example I will be able to say, because that is such a unique thing to Steven Universe. That being said, maybe I do have others to offer, or at least other ways of playing that. So rather than being like, we are merged into one thing, it could be that you're like a set of twins who are always together, or like a couple who are always together, or a like parent-child who are always together. The general idea with the fusion is that you are a single fictional entity that is comprised of multiple people, but you kind of act as one. And there are lots of different ways to play that out. So for our gather info questions, I really like these being about like things that are impending. So like, who here will blank next? I mean, really, this is just like I don't know what to put in here, but right, like these questions that all like look forward. Yeah, like what do I remember about a person? What do I remember about X? And it could be like a thing or a person or a place. And okay, actually, I really, really like this. I like this a lot, because this doesn't demand a specific outcome, right? Because there's the idea of like, I'm from the future. What do I remember about this place? But we know fundamentally that the timeline that we're playing is different than the one that the character will know from their history, because they've come here to change it and they're actively changing it. Or if I'm from the past, what do I remember about this place? Right? It's like you see this whole different version of it. Or what do I remember about this person? And it's like, oh, you've had like prophetic dreams about this person. This is what you remember about them. Weird, evocative shit like that. I think this is super cool. This middle one, I'm less certain of. I'm going to delete it. I'm not happy about this. When will X happen? But what do I remember about X? This is super on point. This is really, really good. I feel like this is very emblematic of what we want. What do I remember about X? Because it could just be like, give me some information about X, but we're just coloring it as being a memory, and I feel like this context is really cool. I think this really evokes a lot, at least for me. And then Sithmaster makes another really good suggestion, this idea of like what really happened here, because we have what's really going on here as one of the classic questions. If we look at Blades as it originally, our game that we're hacking here, what's really going on here, like every playbook has this. What's really going on here? It's always there. And then we have our more variable ones. So the Lurk is not the most interesting, but the Whisper has a super interesting set. So they've still got what's really going on here. How can I reveal X? What drives them to do this? What do they intend to do? These are nice as a pair. What do they intend to do? What drives them to do this? What is hidden or lost here? What echoes in the ghost field? What is arcane or weird here? These are super cool questions. Like, all the ones that are specific to a playbook are definitely the most interesting. And yeah, Ratsuka, they all have different questions. And this is something I'm playing up a little bit more heavily than Blades does. But if we look back here, right, like the Hound cannot ask what is arcane or weird here. They can ask what do they intend to do, which was also on the Whisper list, but in a different position. Here it's front and center. How can I get them to do X? What are they really feeling? Where are they vulnerable? Where did X go? This is like a super houndy question. And how can I find X? And then what's really going on here, which is like the most general question possible. And yeah, this idea that the time traveler could know about, like, you know, someone coming back in time, might know the history of, like, oh, well, you know, in 1940 whatever, the Nazis fought the Americans in a war. Cool. But like specific context, like how did people feel while fighting that war or whatever, like, you don't fucking know. You read in a history book. You don't know shit. And so what you remember about a thing is going to be informed by that. But yeah, this idea of like what really happens. I like this play of grammar that Sithmaster has suggested, where it's like, and I like presenting it in this really convoluted. It's just like there's this whole weird syntax thing. What really happens or happened here? Something to do with another time traveler, something to figure out if you or another time anomaly is, of course. Yes, I like this idea of like, do these events, or how do these events connect? Right? Because like, what I'm trying to formulate a question around is like, we've come back here for a reason. How does what's happening here connect to that? So like, how do these events connect? I feel like I want to give this a name for this thing that I've traveled through time to change. Is it just fate? Do we just call it fate? I mean, I feel like I want to characterize that a little bit more and have it be this, like, you know, because it's the fate that you must change, right? It's your whole like purpose of getting there. And then yeah, what here doesn't have time working correctly. Like what here defies the flow of time? And then yeah, how do these events connect to fate? I'm all for ignoring any kind of like science of time travel, and making it more of like a poetic kind of time travel, right? Using ideas like fate rather than just like time streams or whatever other like pseudoscientific nonsense goes on. Just as like a stylistic thing, I mean, if an individual games people want to go that direction, then like more power to you, great. But at least in the like setting in the can, you know, the like default version, what I will push on you is a vibe where it's not about any kind of like jargony sci-fi thing. We want to stay well within this like emotional genre. So we have, what do I remember about X? What really happens or happened here? How do these events connect to fate? What here defies the flow of time? And in terms of like answers to this question of like what really happened or happens here, if someone's like, we're going in and I'm like to the giant cave and it's like, what really happens here? This is an opportunity for the GM to like spout some evocative shit about things. It's not just like, yeah, you're gonna like fight this monster. The monster is 60 feet in on the left up the stairs. Like, it's not about necessarily just being like, this is the exact specific thing that is going to happen, because we don't know that yet. But we can foreshadow things, right? This is an invitation to foreshadow stuff. And I like that these are close together. So you can like be like, what do I remember about this place? And then like, what really happens here? And we can talk about the gap between what you remember and what really happens here. This like future echo that you're getting now. I want to do at least like 5 or 6 questions per character for gather info. I would love to have one that relates to people, or like a pair that relate to people and how they're feeling. So yeah, Ringsong 88. I'm using fate here with a capital F to refer to this like reason that we have traveled back in time or forward in time or whatever. Like the purpose of our visit. Right? You traveled through time to change someone's fate. Name them and the reason you traveled. This is our fate, capital F. And so how things connect to it. We're going to have some promises, which are kind of like my game's thing that is notionally similar to like beliefs. That's gonna be an element of it. Yeah, like how is so and so different now? Or how is... See, this doesn't quite... Because what I want this question to be about is like, you have this notion of how someone should be based on your timeline. And then like, yeah, how is this person that you're connected to different? I wish I had some more elegant shorthand for this. Here's a big problem I'm having right now. I want to be able to relate to this concept of like, okay, the purpose that we have traveled back in time for, which is to change a person's fate. Okay, first of all, we're gonna get rid of this whole idea of like, and say why. We don't need to say. We're here to change their fate. Name that person. And really, this isn't name them, this is put their name here. Bloop. and it's to change another player character's fate. Put their name here. Boosh. And so it's really like it's your fated something, and it's like fated person. But I want a nicer way of saying this. All right, well, for now, we're just going to put in fated person. That is going to be... Okay, so how is... What does this moment reveal about my fated person? Yeah, because it's like... I just can't think of a good way of saying that. And so yeah, if I do X, what might happen? This is a fun one that I like from the this is in Blades. It's one of the Leech's questions. Yeah, what might happen if I blah? If I do a thing. I'll rephrase it to be exactly as John wrote it, because I trust him to have done a good job. What might happen if I boop? The fated person? My fated person? I'll phrase it this way for now. So yeah, the idea is to center some of my ability to gather information on this kind of core, like, MacGuffin for my character, which is this idea of, like, I'm here to do this thing relating to this person. I need to change this person's fate. So, obviously, if I have this big mission in my time-traveling life, it is to do this thing relating to this person. I want to be able to get information about them. So yeah, how do these events connect to blah, blah, blah? What here defies the flow of time? What does this moment reveal about my favorite person? So I like the idea of being able to, like, interrogate, like, learn stuff about them, as well as learn things about events in the context of them. There might not be any room for this question. This question might not matter. Yeah, there's definitely room for us to change our minds about whose fate we need to change. And so for the outsider, right, we have a rival. Choose another player character. They are your rival. You always have exactly one rival. Put their name here. Cool. So we have a rival. Our entire darkness prompt is all about how we're tainted and bad and blah, 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 and you can only escape the darkness when you see that your rival has their own demons that they struggle with, and the two of you accomplish something together despite your differences, and then you choose a new rival. Right, so we have a moment of epiphany where, okay, first we get all dark, we feel bad about ourselves, we go through this experience of, we're too tainted by darkness, we're too edgy, we're bad. We can never be friends with anyone. We're crap. We should go do something dramatic. And this person that you have been like chasing and trying to become better than and all this shit has to reveal their inner world to you and show that they have their own demons that they struggle with. And then the two of you do something together, right? So it's the character has this like spiral of action. We do something notable with our central figure to our playbook, and then having run its course, we must now choose a new rival. So for the time traveler, we're probably going to have something similar in our darkness prompt, I imagine. Right, yeah, like I love the idea of as we're playing, it's like, oh yeah, so and so is going to be the like cool person, and they're the hero I need to train. I need to like come back in time and train them to be better so that they'll win the thing. And then midway through, you're like, oh, actually, this person's crap. I'm going to train this other person. My whole arc about bringing someone up so that they can do this amazing thing, I could have that be about someone else. And I might learn things now that I'm back in time, or the timeline might change sufficiently now that I'm back in time that it will change things and change who my fated person should be. Definitely these other special abilities need to relate to that character as well. We'll figure out how. I think so. I think we have a move where it's that you get extra links when you social link with your fated person, which I need to find a replacement term for because it's so awkward. And then as like a second clause to this, I'm not sure, but this move needs a little more to it. It's a good start. It's a good start. I definitely like this idea of like encouraging them to hang out. I like the idea of spending special armor to be in two places at once, which AJ Robe mentions, like, could this character do that? I'm like, maybe. To be in two places at the same time. Or perform some other feat of time manipulation. And so what we're saying here, right, is that like you can spend your special armor to do some crazy fictional thing around time manipulation. You can do it once per score. Our suggested prompt is two places at the same time. It's not going to be rewind time or do any of that crap. It's not going to let you change roles. It's just going to give you this some kind of cool fictional positioning where you can do a cool time thing of your devising. Get creative. Come up with something. Boom. I'm into that. Yeah, like how much detail I want to demand of them initially is a fair question. I don't know. I don't know if it's just enough to be like, you're here to change this person's fate. And that's it. That's all we say. We don't know what their fate is necessarily. but we know that we want to change it? Or do we need to put that, like, you think this is going to happen? Actually, you know what? So, Ringsong, I think I like what you're getting at, and I think for me, what I want to put here is I want to have this player make a statement about what their character thinks is going to happen. So, like, what dark fate are you here to prevent? Right? And so this isn't about saying what is going to happen. This is just saying what would have happened if the time traveler didn't show up. So it doesn't step on anyone's toes. It aligns already with... sorry, let me bring up... Is this it? Yeah, so in our crew creation, we already know the nature, like the first things we decide are all about the antagonism in the game, right? So we know the nature of the darkness, we know what its agenda is, we know its origin, we know some stuff about the mundane world. This is, it's incomplete at the moment, but this is the bits that matter we have. So we already know if it's, the darkness is in worship of a higher power, or the nature of the darkness is to propagate and thrive, let's say, is the option we chose. Its agenda is to colonize the planet. And its origin is interstellar invaders. That would be a pretty straightforward one, right? So it's these interstellar invaders that want to propagate and thrive, and to do that, they want to colonize the planet. So it's like this weird alien force that's trying to take over and manifesting as this, like, psychic badness that is turning people into monsters and shit. Cool. So then I, the time traveler, am here to prevent a dark fate. Well, I already have... This is not an unfair thing for me to, like, demand of my players when we've already talked about all of this shit. We've already chosen all of these things, and we know what our origin of our protagonists is, and, like, what our ultimate destiny is, all that kind of shit. We've already made a bunch of statements that help populate this space. So I think it is fair to have something like this. What dark fate are you here to prevent? Because I don't enjoy making players come up with, like, super intense evocative shit just off the cuff. I think it's really unfair to ask that of people. So it would not be fair to provide a prompt like this without first having the players do a bunch of the work to lay the foundations for that. But I think that can be good. Because definitely I feel like just having the person isn't quite enough. And this could even be, like, about the time that you're from, too, right? So, I don't know. There's, like, a bunch of different directions that this can go. And this is more like our crew book stuff than it is like a lot of the character playbook stuff. But anyways, this all being said, let's talk about XP prompts. So we are good at confess and we are good at empathize. Do we still feel that that's true? I still, in my heart of hearts, feel that that's true. I feel like investigate is a very strong candidate, though. You know what? I'm switching it. We're switching it. It's going to be investigate and confess. Because investigate is our skill about like finding shit out and stuff, and I feel like if we come back in time, we're gonna get to the bottom of some shit. And that this also aligns with our Madoka kind of prime example, right? Because Homura spends a lot of her time trying to figure out how she can change fate. And so, yeah, I feel like that's super legit. And then that makes our XP prompts easier as well. Overall, it makes for something that is a bit more sensical in my mind. Yeah, I like the idea that Ringsong is suggesting of like the darkness prompt relating to like losing memories or some kind of like time confusion thing. Um, in fact, the one that appeals to me most strongly is something that gets referenced in Madoka, is the idea of like Homura forgetting why, like having traveled through time so much that it's all like lost meaning and she doesn't even know why she's doing it anymore. So like, just these are just notes to myself, some kind of like time confusion, forget why you're even here, or what you were trying to change. And this is like something I mean, of all the fucking garbage movies to reference, so the movie Looper, which is not a great movie, but is like, in terms of time travel movies, does a lot of things right. Particularly having the characters just say flat out, let's not fucking talk about how time travel works. But there's the whole thing where old guy, time travel guy, like starts having trouble remembering like his own memories that drove him to do the thing that he's doing. So he starts like acting without context. Like it's all fucking weird, right? Like he's trying to save this person that he will no longer have met given the changes that have happened in the past that he's meddling with. Like super cool idea in what is otherwise a heavy-handed, goofy movie. I have not seen Predestination. There are like a bunch of time travel movies that I haven't seen that I know are good. Like there's the one where they figure out time travel in their garage, and it's like a really humble time travel movie. Can't remember the name of it. Hello, Kira Darkness. Welcome to the stream. So yeah, I really like this idea for the darkness prompt for the time traveler of like losing your way, essentially getting lost in the woods of time, in the time woods. Right, Primer is what that other one was called. I still need to watch that movie. Definitely spoil it for me if it's relevant though. Kira, you can definitely share something you're excited about. It would not bother me one bit. So we're looking at XP triggers for this playbook that has investigate and confess as its. So addressed a challenge with revelation or. So revelation being the confess aspect, because I feel like that lines up with this idea that we're. I mean, the thing about this word revelation as a way to deal with, to address challenges, is like that could work for investigation too. You're like revealing, to investigate is to, in some ways, reveal information that is otherwise hidden, right? So, but yeah, I like this idea of that being central to the character, and that's, I mean, that whole like investigate, confess loop is interesting. So what could our other thing be? Oh shit, you get to play Monster Hearts 2. I really want to play Monster Hearts 2. I recently just wrapped up a first edition Monster Hearts game, played in person with some friends of mine who had never played role playing games before, really. And it was super cool. It was super good. It was a very... I mean, they really played into being monsters. My God, I was like, okay, they might be a little bit timid, it's their first game, and they were just like, no, I do the most like dramatic and heinous things all the time, and I was like, okay, guys, okay, just chill out. You have murdered every NPC that I have attached a name to, and we're playing Monster Hearts. Yeah, Monster Hearts is amazing, top tier game, very, very important game. In terms of informing a lot of like other games that were designed following it, and as part of the whole like Apocalypse World like conversation, like, so a little bit of like indie RPG history, right? Like Apocalypse World, Vincent Baker made it to kick off a conversation and to guide the conversation in a way that he wanted it to go. And because he is a game designer, right, he elected to express that not as a manifesto statement, but just as a game, right? Like the game itself was his way of communicating these ideas about how games should be. And so, you like, obviously Apocalypse World itself is very important, but what it really did was initiate this dialogue with the design community about about so many things, but like about how to design games, about how to support the like GM role, and how to design around that better, and how to structure things better, and to it was a way for Vincent to like try to expose a lot of the kind of things that had gone unspoken about games, I feel like, or that had gone unexamined, unevaluated by people who engage with the medium. Right, like the whole idea of like telling someone how to GM the game, like that like offended people when he published the game. People were like pissed at Vincent Baker for telling them how to MC in his book, right? But like now I feel like we're at a place where we look back at that and we're like, oh well, that was stupid, right? Like to get offended about that, that's dumb, because like obviously the MC plays the game as well, so why would the MC not have rules? That's stupid for them not to have rules. That means they're not playing a game. Right, this is, and like I'm kind of paraphrasing the read I have of like what Vincent's game is trying to say. And so it had a bunch of important like fundamental stuff to say. It's also a game about intimacy and about community and relationships and stuff like that. And it has a bunch of things to say about those things. And then Avery comes along and she publishes Monster Hearts. And in a similar way, it's a game that has a lot to say about the content that it includes. So it has a lot to say about like teenagers. It mostly says that teenagers are monsters, just in general. Right? Like you don't even have to be a werewolf to be a monster. In Monster Hearts, you can be the mortal, and you're still a monster. So it has a lot to say about that. It has a lot to say about like social power, about the like impossibility of creating anything lasting when you're a teenager. It has cool things to say about like feelings, and sexuality and queerness and all that kind of stuff. Like one of the most like insightful things I think is the move where you turn someone on, and this idea that like we don't have agency over what turns us on when we are teenagers, right? And that like obviously that doesn't have like any bearing on like whether or not we are straight or gay or whatever, but just that stuff happens and you have hormones going all over the place, and like you just get aroused, and it's not clear why, and it's confusing and disorienting, and like the move that she designed around that is this like brilliant expression of all those things. So yeah, all of these games are like very brilliant syntheses of these ideas that they're trying to express, and become part of a like broader conversation about how to design games and about games in general, which Vincent like provided a framework for, which is amazing and super cool. And so then yeah, you have like Sagas of the Icelanders, Dungeon World, etc., a bunch of them all in that same space. In terms of the like ordering of when things came out, I can't remember if Monster Hearts was the first like big. See, here I'm making kind of fuzzy statements, but like that I knew of, Monster Hearts was like I think the first big game that came out of Apocalypse World that was like published and had like a book and that I played, certainly. And I think Dungeon World followed it, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, I'm sure the two were like developed concurrently. Like it's not like one person made this game and then that stopped and then someone else started making a game, and then like everything's kind of all happening amorphously at once. But for me, at least, my experience was like played a bunch of Apocalypse World and then played Monster Hearts kind of shortly thereafter. Like Avery came out with it fairly quickly. Yeah, and this idea of like generations of games spawn from it, and it's fairly early in that whole process, and part of why Avery is releasing a second edition of the game. Oh cool, there is like a list, because I know that Vincent was trying to like form a list, and like a timeline kind of thing, like a lineage. And yeah, there are like so many games that exist within this conversation. And essentially, like, if you make a Powered by the Apocalypse game, you're saying that on some level you kind of fundamentally, I don't want to say agree, but like have something to say about what Vincent originally said in Apocalypse World. Bloop. So all of that to say, I think Monster Hearts is really, really cool, but it's part of this whole cloud of games, this whole thing, right? And you can't really separate them. Is my game on this list? I'm not even paying attention. Okay, it's not on this list yet. Good, because it shouldn't be, because it's not published. But like Blades is in there, right? Blades is a Powered by the Apocalypse game. It drifts very far, but it still, at its core, is part of that conversation. As is this one, and I'm trying not to forget it. And in fact, if anything, some of the decisions I'm making are like recursive, where it's like, the pendulum swung out to Blades, and then mine is that we're swinging the pendulum back in towards Apocalypse World again, or towards Monster Hearts, or these other games that exist in a more kind of core, truer to form, less drifted Apocalypse World, branch or whatever. Because Blades is like quite, it's still connected, but it's quite a remove. It's very like, it has drifted far. That was a huge tangent. Let's talk about XP triggers for the time traveler who can confess and investigate. We have this idea of revelation, which could cover either confess or investigate, depending on how we want to frame it. So what is the other kind of problem-solving style that we want to encourage for the time traveler? So right, they need to like reveal this information that they have access to that other people don't. And like the more I think about it, the more I'm just like, they just need like a million gather info things, or a million, or like more abilities that are about giving them this access to this information. And so like the ways that we will address challenges are by like, it's not prediction, but there is a word that's like that. I mean, I guess it's kind of foresight. With revelation or foresight? With guessing? With prophecy? Okay, here's the thing. We're just going to put some fucking evocative language in here. We're going to say, address a challenge with prophecy or revelation. Boom. And like, in as much as like Homura in Madoka like ends up being a badass like murder machine, at her core, what the character is about is this stuff. Like, yeah, she's good at fighting, cool, whatever. But what she spends most of the series doing is like ominously foreboding something and then revealing stuff about the like essentially exploring the fictional space of the narrative. So yeah, I think this is actually super on point. Super good. I am very happy with this idea. Prophecy or revelation. And these are bullet points, so they don't need punctuation. Yeah. I'm just making sure. I'm just going to do some formatting stuff. Am I being consistent? Yes, I am. Okay, good. Yeah, I like that a lot. That sounds really nice. Those are fun, evocative words. And it makes sense. It makes sense for the kinds of fiction we want to deliver. I think these are super on point, but that these don't necessarily support this yet. Right, like this is a very fighty one that we have, and then like this doesn't really connect with that. So like our abilities need to do a better job of supporting this idea of prophecy and revelation. Our gather info stuff kind of works. I feel like we need to have an ability about revealing ominous future shit. Right? Like something about like warning people off of a certain course of action. Something that helps us gather information. I feel like the one that would help gather info wouldn't be like just like, oh, you get more dice when you gather info, but I think it needs to be that the like ways that you gather information can be different. So like a move about broader scope / access to gather info, also +1 die to do it. And so this +1 die to gather info is really strong because that's, rather than saying just like you get +1 die to a given action, this is saying any action you use to gather info is going to do it better, and also this idea of having like a broader scope of access, which, so this is very rough. Obviously, this move doesn't really say anything yet, but this idea of broader scope or access is to say like, you know, we're from the future, so we can know historically what has happened, and that means that the like breadth of stuff that we can ask information about might be bigger, or you know, that we have access to like particular bands of information that might not be available to us. And so, yeah, the idea would be that this would change our effect level. There we go. There's a way to say it that doesn't make me sound like an idiot. This would affect our effect. So yeah, this can impact the effect level that you might achieve. And yeah, like I don't want this character to just constantly be asking questions. It's kind of irritating. But if they're really strong at it, it seems good. And maybe giving them like potency, so essentially like always being at a higher effect level to gather info is better than giving the +1 die to do it. Maybe both is rad though. So okay, and this move obviously needs to be called like Oracle or something. You see the yeah, so like you have potency when gathering info. When you gather info that relates to history, here we'll say fated person. So we'll make it a little more specific. So it's only if you gather info relating to your fated person that you get an extra die. But in general, you have potency when gathering information. Yeah, so exactly what Sith Master said. I came to the exact same conclusion as you, Sith Master, without looking at chat. Look at me go. I'm a game designer, and so are you. Because yeah, like the Hound move that Ratsuka is mentioning here, right? Of like increased effect when you gather info in like specific way. Like I don't like these moves when they're like super broad. I like them when they are when they allow people to be conditionally powerful. So this one about potency when gathering information maybe needs to be more specific. Maybe it needs to have some conditions applied to it. We'll leave it for now. An ability about revealing ominous future shit. I mean, this is what we want, right? Like, so this is when you reveal your impossible knowledge. Okay, here's the thing. Actually, I have two questions. One, is there a difference between getting +1 effect level and having potency? Right? Like, what do those things mean? And are those terms used interchangeably? So if I control F in the character sheets for potency, does anyone have potency? You can gain potency when communicating with the supernatural. It's just like another way to change your effect. Is that what it is? Is that how potency works? Yeah, so like you gain potency in combat versus supernatural. You gain potency when communicating with the supernatural. Where else does potency show up? So I feel like this is a gap in my understanding of the game. They gain potency in 1 armor. So this is the only context that I've seen it so far where it doesn't relate to supernatural stuff. Yeah, so it's totally... Potency is about fighting supernatural shit. Yeah, so it seems like it mostly relates to supernatural things. That's not like strictly true, but it's mostly true about it. And so saying that someone has an increased effect level is different than saying that someone gets potency. Even though potency might give you an increased effect level, potency also has some fictional trappings associated with it. It seems to me. Ones that might not actually be super relevant for this game. Because I feel like or at least I shouldn't say that, because like our equivalent is Transcendence, right? Where we go into like potency mode. And that because the game is less, at least currently, in my envisioning of it, is less like sandboxy. Some of this stuff around potency or like tier, etc., like we're doing this like really flattened thing where it's like when you are not transformed, you're like tier 0, and then you get to be like, on the scale when you are a magical girl. And yeah, that it would be just as good to say +1 effect versus. And so I want to have a move or an ability for this playbook that's also like, when you reveal your impossible knowledge and warn against and foretell a dark fate, right? Like, I actually really want this to be that you gain potency when you do this, because it is more evocative. I don't know if it's reasonable or appropriate. And then I need to replace our effect level here with something a little more interesting, and something that is nested conditionally. Because this one is basically just the like doom, like mad prophecy thing, which is rad and which I want to encourage. But yeah, I feel like potency is kind of a loaded word, and yeah, we'll just +1 effect level is fine. It just sounds so cool. I just want to say potency. Is this how you spell foretell? It is. It just looks goofy. So moves that just blanketly give you an increased effect level, I feel like are already pretty strong. I don't know if this is enough of a thing. Oh, yeah, so here's what we do. If it comes to pass, mark experience. Haha. So you totally... Here's what this move means. You're really good at warning people away from things. Bad things that you know are going to happen. If they're inevitable, but you still warn against them, you mark experience. Oh shit, it's the Mask Squad. Damn, I don't know if my channel can handle the Mask Squad in its entirety. Yeah, this feels very Apocalypse Worldy. This has echoes of some of the ideas in like the Battle Blade move, where you can say who lives and dies, or but actually, like in terms of its flavor, it's kind of like there, but it's actually more like the Offener Right move, where you like give advice and then people act on it. This is so many people. Thank you, is secretly Paul. I didn't mean to reveal that you are secretly Paul. You're clearly not Paul, you're someone else. I don't know if this is super relevant for a game where you go on scores, is the one thing I'll say. Right? Like, what am I actually... Like, this is cool in theory, but in practice, what am I actually doing? Who am I doing this to, and why, and where, and how? That part I'm not so sure of. So we'll let that come out in the wash. I don't know. Maybe people will use this move. Maybe this move never makes sense to use. I want to circle back to this move where we can see the myriad timelines leading from past to future. So when we gather information that relates to fated person, we get +1 die. That's all well and good. I would like to add an additional clause to this, though. Oh, shit, I'm being bombarded with pennies. It's brutal. So extra little thing. I mean, maybe I'll just note to myself that I want to put more move in here and carry on elsewhere. We've got a bunch of open questions about what we're doing with this playbook still, but that's fine. That's what playtesting is for. You get other people to design your game. Alright, so I'm going to move on to some evocative shit and actually design the darkness prompt for this playbook. So that's what the people came here to see. They came here to see the heavy shit. So this whole idea that I was talking about earlier for the darkness prompt for the time traveler is the notion of like losing track of why you're even here being, traveled through time, which is something that gets alluded to in Madoka, and I think is actually this really powerful idea of like this character churning through this this like endless treadmill of redoing and traveling in time and trying to like change, trying to like steer the bus of fate away from the cliff, but that you might do that for so long that you forget why you're even there, right? Or what things were like before, or whatever else. So this whole idea of having this profound confusion about like what is going on and why you're even there and what you're trying to do. And so to keep this in line with our other prompts, I'm just going to zoom in on some of them here and we can talk about them. So the Guardian has a really classic and simple one, right? So the formatting for these is essentially we have like an evocative roleplay kind of prompt that's about like here's how your character is feeling, and then which is like this first bit, right? So all the people you have sworn to protect are unworthy of that protection. You belong in the front, leading the fight. Cool. This is a statement about like feelings, and then we have a specific action that we can pursue. Wherever foes exist, you seek them out and confront them directly right now. Right? So this is a thing to do. And then we have our escape clause. So you can only escape the darkness when someone shows you how you are vulnerable and loves you despite your own weakness. And then any follow through as a result of that would come in a subsequent paragraph. So another good one for the outsider who's the like edgy, redeemed bad guy, rival figure. You have seen too much of the darkness and there is no hope for redemption. You are tainted by all that you know and all that you have done. You have to banish the darkness from the world now, alone, before others are tainted like you. You can only escape the darkness when you see that your rival has their own demons they struggle with, and the two of you accomplish something together despite your differences. You must choose a new rival. So this is what we're coming up with for the Time Traveler, and our broad strokes thing that we want to do is around like losing track of where and why and what you're doing. In terms of the kinds of actions that might result in you doing, here's the thing. So I want to say like, yeah, that would lead to you like running away or like trying to go back to your home time or something like that. But the things with our prompts to action is that they need to be both self-destructive, which I think all those previous things are, but then also that they like flow nicely into play and into our whole like going on scores and all that kind of shit. So it's a matter of keeping our characters' self-destructive spirals in line with the stuff we want to be doing in the game in general, which is a little bit tricky. Which is why like the Guardians one is about like fighting the bad guys still, but just fighting the bad guys in a shitty, unproductive way. Which honestly, when I think of it that way, like trying to do good things in shitty, unproductive ways is how I feel about like most people's behavior most of the time. But oh shit, hi Elf and Alex, all these cool people, welcome to the channel. So we need to have something like that for the Time Traveler, where it fits into this idea of them having this time crisis, if you will, but that it lead to them doing things that aren't like completely stupid to, at the table. And then that our way that we can repair this, if I think back to like source material like Madoka, I think of the end of it where there is this whole, that's where I kind of am looking as my like media touchstone for this darkness prompt, is the whole like Homura Madoka thing that goes on at the end, and like her feeling really like mixed up about what she's been trying to accomplish and that it's like never gonna work, and having all these like ultra fatalistic things, and that she's kind of like lost in the woods of time travel, and then like trying to think of like what does Madoka do to like pull her out of that, and to keep this in line with like our outsider one, where it leads to this like cathartic like I really like the design here because this is a whole arc for the character, right? Where there's like a bunch of feelings, you do a thing, it forces you to reconcile with your rival, and do something together, and then once that's resolved, you escape the darkness, and you have to choose a new rival. So it's like these emotional arcs of people falling to darkness and redeeming themselves push us into doing cool narrative shit that we want these characters to be doing anyways, right? So like the whole Madoka redeeming Homura thing that happens in that show, we can put inside of this darkness prompt. And then, the character can then choose someone else's fate to be trying to fix, right? Like, so I feel like our escape clause relates to fated person, which I need to think of a cleaner way to say this. Like saves you. Like it's kind of like, I don't need you to save me. I don't need you to change my fate. I fucking got this. And they like help you out instead. It has to be something that I think the two of them can do together, and that builds connection. But the like fundamentally, like the Guardian one, this can be about like relieving a person of this massive burdensome thing that they've taken on by showing, not that it was all for nothing, but that like it's worked, that they have accomplished something. Yeah. So it's not saves you, it shows you, I mean, they're saving you by doing this, but like shows you that their fate has changed already. Makes some tangible step to show that this awful thing that you have predicted, right? Like what dark fate are you here to prevent? That this isn't going to happen, or that like it's none of their fucking business or whatever, right? That like that they don't need to fix your fate. And so this could be this like doomed character accepting that they're doomed could just as easily alleviate this burden as anything else. Although that would be pretty dark. So in terms of what to write in this prompt, okay, first of all, going to 10 point, doing tiny letters. So how do we characterize this like time confusion feeling that our character is going to have in a sufficiently general way that we're not stepping on anyone's toes? I mean, yeah, Madoka is real dark, and is an immense inspiration for everything that I'm doing in this game, and that we are doing some dark shit for sure. I just don't know how deep I want to go, and to a certain extent the crew books will modulate this, as will become clear later. Anyways, how do we characterize this whole time confusion thing? So I've already talked about it a little bit, so I just need to synthesize those thoughts. So important notions were things with this idea of being like lost in the woods of time, right? So we don't know why/what we are fighting. So how can we express that in the second person? I love that everyone is here in my chat trolling Elf about how she kills her own characters all the time. It's really funny. Her reputation precedes her, follows her around. So what do we want to say here? That like so much has changed that. Is this the kind of line we want to pull here? If only I could type and spell. Yeah, this idea that like in this whole like crisis of like, does this even affect my time anymore? Will I go back to it and it'll just always be the same? So this is the like, is there any point line, which is one way you could do it. You could also do the it's this idea that like you're trying to change it, but you're never going to be able to. That there's like this potential rut, that like time wants to go a certain way. That fate requires these things to happen. And so these are each interesting in their own ways, because this first one, right, where it's like you change the timeline enough that you fix this timeline, but it no longer is your timeline. What that really is about is a sense of alienation, I feel like. Because you're like, this immediately begs the question, why am I bothering to help these people when I ultimately came here for selfish reasons, to help myself, right? To fix my own timeline. And the whole idea of like, are these people worth saving, even though they're not really the people I came here to save, is kind of what this realization is about. The second one is about how I'm shitty and ineffectual, right? And I can't accomplish the thing that I'm trying to do, that I've been struggling and wrestling with fate, but that it's not going anywhere, that we're not solving the problems we set out to solve, or that they are unsolvable. If not by me, then maybe just period. So between these two, we just have to decide which is kind of the more interesting emotional arc. We know that ultimately, as part of this whole process of resolving our darkness prompt, we're going to change how we look at fate in general, right? And actually looking at this, since we have a 2-clause thing, one thing I'm realizing would be interesting, right, is like, we're here to prevent a dark fate, and we're here to change something. If there's like one person that we have decided is pivotal to it. I like the idea that when we come out of our darkness prompt, we change one or the other of these, but not both. So essentially, right, we can decide that we've been taking the wrong approach, and that what we need to change relates to a different person. Or we can change what we think the outcome is going to be, right? So it's like, which one are you dissatisfied with? I kind of like having that be open. I think there's some cool, I don't know, like story, like narrative fodder there. I think that's interesting as a decision to prompt them to make. Right? Like that we realize that, yeah, we've solved this one problem, and then that behind it, there's an even worse problem. Hooray. Right? That kind of shit can be really fun. yeah, or that like that fate is now put on someone else is also really interesting, right? That like you haven't changed that someone will have to die for this thing, right? To like this monster is going to eat someone. You can put a different person in its mouth, but you can't like make it not be about to eat someone. Um, and the dark fate that we're trying to prevent is like far enough away that it's probably never going to happen in the course of play. It's a big ominous thing uh, that is off in the distance, right? That is like casting a shadow over our narrative. Um, but we're never going to go and like directly address it, I don't think. Right, so yeah, this, like we see this all kinds of time travel movies, like the whole butterfly effect thing or whatever else, right? Like this is a classic time travel trope of like you don't eliminate the bad thing, you just kind of like nudge it a little bit and it hits someone else. Or yeah, right, like I came back in time to, or like I'm an ancient hero who traveled forward in time, let's say is my time traveler concept, and I'm here to train the next generation of heroes. I'm from the like ancient magical kingdom that this one is like the second generation of. Like every 1,000 years, it's fated to happen, and so I'm here to pass my sword on to the who will be the new hero. And you start out the game with the framing of like, oh yeah, like Elf's character who's the unlikely hero. Obviously, you're gonna get the sword. I gotta give you the sword. This is the whole thing. And then we go through this whole arc. We change that and we say, oh, I'm still here to give someone the sword so they can fight the big evil thing. That's the fate that I'm trying to prevent. But the person I'm centered around, I've realized like the unlikely hero isn't the person who's going to do that. It's going to be so and so's character. Um, okay, so I'm stoked on this idea of our last thing that we do. Um, change one of fated person or dark fate. I think that's cool. I think that leads to some interesting stuff. Um, Also, yes, Elf, you might play the unlikely hero. I don't know. I'm not saying that you being the hero is unlikely. It's literally the name of the playbook. It's right here. Okay? This is not a dig at you. And yes, Alex, the whole thing is that there is something contradictory about changing fate, and that is the whole point. Yeah, totally. um, right, like it's ironically this character has a very fatalistic sense about it all in the end, probably as well. Like they know that they can't ever really fix it, but they're trying anyways. There's a certain yo. Okay, so that's it. Okay, thank you, Alex. This was the conversation I needed, right? Um, you've known all along. God, I can't spell. That changing fate was impossible. But here you are. Yeah, like this is totally the dark hole to put this character in, right? Is like not only is it pointless, but you were lying to yourself. You knew the whole time. Like clearly this wasn't going to work, and yet here you are trying to do it, right? For wasted time. I won't capitalize it, but right? Like this, you got to do that whole Homura crisis. So, what we don't get out of the whole Madoka thing is because the crisis that the characters go through is often a like inward, like self-destructive, like turmoil thing. What we need for this game is a prompt that players can act on. So for this character, I'm not sure what that would be. I figured it out. So if you can't avoid fate, then the best thing to do is to run headlong into it, right? So yeah, if this fate is inevitable, why not speed it along? Meet it without fear or hesitation. Your transformation sequence phase revealing lost, confused, but well-meaning Jeff Bridges. Yeah, excellent. Okay, this is rad. I want to articulate this like thing that you do most directly. So I'll just say you take direct action to drive yourself, to drive events towards the dark fate you have foreseen. So essentially, we already have the prompt for this. It exists over here. What dark fate are you here to prevent, right? So we start doing things that push us towards this happening, whatever that is. Cool. That's really nice. I like that a lot. So you can only escape the darkness when... right, and we've done some prep for our escape clause, right? The fated person shows you that their fate doesn't need changing. So this is beyond just like, right? Like I don't say just like you can't change it, so you let it happen. This is you take direct action to drive events towards the dark fate that you have foreseen. Right? So this is about making it happen sooner, even. So now you're gonna change fate, but in this opposite way. So I think this is a strong enough prompt that it won't generally result in people doing nothing. People can always choose to just be like, oh, my character just like cries about it and does nothing. Certainly. And like anything that I write here could be interpreted that way, because you could always say like, oh well, just being an ineffectual piece of shit is, you know, advancing this idea of me being whatever, right? People will have access to that argument, but it's clearly not in the spirit of what this prompt is about. And if you try to just sit there and do nothing, I ain't giving you experience for this. Boom, for fulfilling the requirements of your darkest self. Nah, hell nah. You're not getting it. Right, and we're uniquely positioned, as Sithmaster is saying, to make this happen, in theory, right? We should have everything we need. And I think the MC will be very generous in providing you with information that will help you do this, right? Gleefully will they provide it. So, we can only escape the darkness when our fated person shows us that they don't need us to change their fate. Do I just put it in that bluntly? I feel like I could. this feels like it doesn't quite do the things that I need it to do, because what we really want here, it's beyond just being like, I don't want this to be like, yo, we don't need you. I want it to be like, hey, it's okay, right? Like we need to forgive this person of this burden that they have put upon themselves of needing to change fate in the first place. So this isn't quite right. This has too little to do with us ultimately. So there's got to be a better way to word this. And then I already know that after that, right, we know what our last sentence here is. So change either who your fated person is. I mean, I think we don't need to put it that way. We can just say change either your fated person or dark fate. And so some people in chat are talking about, like, don't we want to connect it to this first clause, right? About how we've like lost track, you know? But I think that ultimately, and this is me making a statement about human stuff, but basically that like when people are upset, the help that they actually need is not generally directly to do with the thing that they are upset about. So if it's like, I have this problem that I can't solve, and I get really upset about it. I'm trying to design a role-playing game, for example, and I'm really struggling with it, because designing role-playing games is really hard. And it's, you know, I'm like trying to work really hard on it. I have a deadline. I get really stressed and upset. And say, for example, that I had this emotional breakdown because I was unable to deliver the fucking playtest package before the end of May. And it's, you know, May 26th. And I'm like losing it, right? It's hard. I'm feeling the crunch. Say that's me. If someone were to come along and be like, well, here you go, Andrew. I finished your game for you. Here's the playtest package ready to go, right? Like, you have solved the thing that has made me upset, right? Kind of. In a similar spirit to if we say, like, oh, yeah, we remind them of, like, why they're here and what they set out to do, right? Like, you've kind of addressed the problem in a way, but not in a way that's going to make me feel less upset about it, certainly. I will just feel worse on some levels. Like, one, I'll be relieved. Yeah, like, yeah, I won't have to do the thing anymore, but also I won't have done the thing, which is what it was really about, right? I'm upset not because I don't have the complete game, but because I wasn't able to make the complete game in this example. And so I think that distinction is really important, and part of why I want to set these darkness prompts up in a specific way is to show, to like express that idea of mine about how people work in the game. So rather than say, like, just like very head on directly confront this whole idea of like you don't get them out of their darkest self by changing your fate, or by you know, like getting them back on track or helping them remember what they came here for or whatever. Instead, it's to address this like underlying thing that's going on. So my idea here is that we don't change our fate or like re-clarify this existing state of affairs, what we instead do is release them of this like crushing burden that they have made for themselves, and not by saying like, oh yeah, this work was all pointless, you didn't need to do it, but just being like, yeah, hey, like, you have done a bunch of work and it's helped, but even if we can't change that, maybe that's okay with me. Maybe I embrace this thing that's going to happen, and I'm like, yo, it's okay, you don't need to change this. But it has to be in a way that shows, one, that our fate doesn't need changing, but then also that like we still value the stuff that they're doing, or that we still want them here, that they're welcome in our timeline, even if it isn't where they quote unquote belong, that kind of thing. Right? And so either way, following that exchange, we know that we need to either change who our fated person is, or what the dark fate that we're trying to work to fix is. So we recontextualize everything. We don't magically solve the problem. We change what we're working on. Maybe we work on a smaller problem. Maybe we work on solving it with different people. And that this will require change. That it will require that the character be different after they've come through it. But again, that's part of what we're saying about human condition, blah blah blah, etc. Is that like you can't pass through this traumatic experience and emerge identical to how you were before, right? It's going to leave its mark on you, in some way. So all that to say, I don't quite like this wording that their fate doesn't need changing. So when the fated person shows you that they like aren't afraid of their fate, I think is a more interesting way to do it, right? To make it about this person like showing you how brave they are. And I want this to be like that, rather than seek to change fate, you accept that you will face it together. Right? So it's about accepting that you're not going to change it, but that it's okay as long as you have your friends. But then because this character is broken inside, like all characters are, they don't get to stop being a time traveler. They just change what they're trying to... they change what they're trying to change. They start pursuing a different goal. And so we might go through this arc numerous times, like, because we can fall to darkness and then escape it. But we won't always escape it, certainly. So, as a quick refresh for folks, or well, this may be a first time for some folks who haven't seen what I've been doing with this game. Oh, and I gotta remember to save. Jesus, I gotta remember to save. Okay, so a quick rundown of how darkness works. So you take stress during the game, and I'm like, boop, boop, boop. I've taken 4 stress, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Boom. So once you're at 9 stress, which is your maximum that you can absorb into your tiny magical girl body, we are now in Eclipse. Boop, boop. While we are in Eclipse, anytime we would take stress, we roll our worst resistance. So if this were a straight out the box character, you would roll 0, let's say. So you roll 2d6, take the lowest result. On a result of a 6, you're fine. You hold on at the like brink of darkness, but you're still okay. If you fail the roll, you fall to darkness. If you get a 4 or 5 on the roll, someone else in your crew can push themselves so they can take 2 stress to keep you in it. Otherwise, you also fall to darkness. When you are in darkness, so you keep your 9 stress filled in, every time you would take stress from that point forward, you then erase it from your sheet. While you're in darkness, you're playing out this prompt, and you're still going. Your objectives, broadly speaking, still align with the rest of the crew. But like if I need to push myself to get an extra die, I erase 2 stress. If I need to resist something and I roll a 3 to resist, then boom, I lose another 3. And then say like a bad thing happens and I try to resist it, I biff the roll, I get like double 1s on a resist roll, I take another 4 stress, I go down to 0 stress, boom, I'm fucking done. It's over. At this point, your character either dies, retires, or becomes a baddie. If you die or retire, they're gone, make a new character. If they become a baddie, you still make a new character, but there is the chance that you can later go on a score to redeem that character. Because we have under our mission types, at least for this crew book, it is an option to cleanse a person or location so the crew can do a score to recover your character who has become a baddies. So that's what's up. I'm feeling extra medium about this playbook. I feel reasonable about this playbook and where it's at. It has a bunch of unfinished moves. I'm going to spend some time off camera doing all this stuff over the coming week, just trying to get the last of the moves polished up. But I still have the fusion to do as a playbook. And this is the last playbook that is not done yet. We have done the Time Traveler. We have done the Unlikely Hero. They're all in this state of still needing revisions to their core abilities, but I've got gather info, starting stats, darkness prompts, XP triggers, all figured out. The moves, not quite, but we're getting there. So yeah, we've got Fusion, Time Traveler, Unlikely Hero, Stranger being a like weird, emotionally distant character who doesn't like get it the way the others do, and who has more affinity for like non-human things than people. We have the Outsider, who is a edgiest edge, super edge, and they have the whole rival mechanic. We have the Enigmatic Hero, who is Tuxedo Mask, basically, and has tension between their actual identity and their superhero identity, and that those are not the dots for those aren't connected by the other PCs. And then lastly, we have the Guardian being the like very bog standard magical girl character who, you know, fights the evil by moonlight and does all that shit. And who's all about like teamwork and fighting things directly. And this is all in our first crew book, which is the Starlit Kingdom, which is like a very Sailor Moon oriented crew book, with the idea being that crew books are going to be like kind of like broad tonal, like situation, setting, and setup packages. So if you want to play a game that's in a certain tone and has certain kinds of content, you would pick a playbook that matches that, rather than in Blades where you're always playing like you could, be in Duskfall and be smugglers or be assassins or be whatever. Like those are all going to share space, and your crew might change from one to the other. I don't have plans to allow folks to change crew books unless maybe it's in like a season 2 or 3 or whatever pivot where the series becomes way fucking darker or different in tone, which I guess could be a thing. But yeah, that's a brief overview of the game as it stands right now. Thanks for tuning in. I am out of time or energy for today, but I'm going to be working on the Fusion next. I'm probably going to try to squeeze in some time to work on it and then finish it up on Monday. So if you want to tune in on Monday, I'm going to be streaming again in the afternoon before going to play on Distracted Elf's channel. We're doing Blades in the Dark Monday night. Alex, I really like the idea of including something about rotating GMs per season. I think I might put that in the game. Because it's what we did with Blades on Elf's channel, speaking of which. And it was actually really fun. It was really cool to pass that hat around. And I think it's nice to have games that aren't like being the GM is like a big sacred thing and only one person is ever that. And it's a big deal. Just being like, yeah, okay, you're the GM this time, and then it's going to move around. I think that's kind of rad. I'm inclined to actually include that notion, Alex. I will steal that if you don't mind, of including a rule that you pass the GM hat around between seasons. I like that. Anyways, bye for now, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for rating my channel, Adam and Elf and all the Mass Squad people. I appreciate everyone's support. If you're interested in playtesting this, follow me on Twitter, support me on Patreon, all that kind of stuff. Check out my YouTube if you want to see the backlog of VODs for this. They're all archived there. And if you want to find my YouTube or my Patreon, you can do that by way of my Twitter profile. Check all that stuff out. Keep an eye on me if you want to playtest. I will be putting out this playtest package the moment it is ready to go, which will be sometime, hopefully within like a week. So maybe like next Friday, I'm going to be putting it out. So yeah, I look forward to watching you nerds play my game and then improving my game and fixing it, because I know it's not anywhere near perfect. And there's lots of tweaking and updating to be done. So stay tuned for more. I try to stream every Friday and Monday. Bye for now.